Welcome to Testing in the Pub.
Welcome back to Testing in the Pub. This episode is a continuation of mine and Steve's chat about hiring and recruitment. If you haven't listened to part 1 yet, then check it out on the website. And as always, thanks for listening.
Another question on CVs then. What's a suitable length? Because the more experience you get, the bigger your CV. Right?
Yeah, not above 4 pages.
Yeah.
4 is definitely it. Not above 4.
Acceptable?
Four
pages
is
acceptable?
4 is just about okay. 3 is good. Two's okay. Two's good. 1 is too short, and anything under 12 point font, so you can fit it all in, is not good. Hiring managers are increasingly, I guess. Well, they're not. The hiring managers are normally older than just employees. I've got your eyesight. It goes as you get older. If you start sort of staring at 10-point font or something, so somebody could fit in all of their interests and everything, then ultimately what that probably shows to me is that you're probably not very good at making a decision, because you thought you'd just dump everything on your CV rather than actually bother to go through and figure out what's actually important, which actually raises another important point. Yeah. It raises another important point about CVs, which is don't send the same CV to every company for every job. Tailor your CV to the company you're applying for. It doesn't take very long, and increasingly now, because companies don't want cover letters.
Yeah, but how would you do that? Because you're actually talking about your experiences and your previous role.
Yeah, but there may be some that you want to highlight more than others. Some may be more applicable for some roles. Some roles, say you've got a role which is particularly, it's a test role, but maybe it's more kind of performance test focused or more security test focused or something like that.
Yeah, that's true.
Put all of the experience you have on that to the fore at the front in the summary section.
Yeah. And
then drop everything else to a later section. It's like anything. It's like so much in testing. It's contextual.
Yeah.
You need to set the context in relation to the context you're in. I.e., I'm applying for this job with this company.
That's a great point. Okay, what's next?
You get through this. Okay, let's go in kind of chronological order. So you've written your absolutely ace CV, you've given it to somebody, whether that's an agent, whether you've sent it in direct, whether you've met someone at a meetup or emailed it to them or whatever, or you've given it to a mate and your mate's handed it into the company they work. Happens, word of mouth.
Yeah, true.
A recommendation. It's very powerful. You get an interview. So you probably get a phone interview first. Phone interviews are good because they allow you as the candidate to find out a little bit about the role from the hiring manager and decide whether it's something you want to do. And it's also great for the hiring manager because it means that they can interview a large number of candidates without having to put as much effort in and time in as if they were trying to just face-to-face interview everyone. So it's more efficient ultimately. But they get an idea, a little bit of an idea about you. You get a little bit of an idea about them.
Yeah.
And I think the key things with phone interviews from a candidate perspective is go somewhere quiet and do the interview. If you do it somewhere loud, and me as the hiring manager thinks you don't think the job's serious. I mean, I've interviewed people before where they've clearly either been in train stations or on the bus a few times. I interviewed one guy where he was clearly running for a train that he was about to miss. And you kind of think
that, I guess that could be like on a lunch break or something if someone's already.
But that's okay. Go and find somewhere quiet.
Yeah.
It's not impossible to find somewhere quiet.
Yeah,
even the corner of a quiet, corner of a quiet coffee shop or something like that. It's kind of fine. And
have you ever used Skype for a phone interview?
I haven't. Although I think that's just more in nature of the hiring processes that I've been a part of. But no, Skype can be very useful. I mean, if you can video interview somebody over Skype, if they're
I had it once.
It can be. I think it can be good. I mean, as a candidate, you need to obviously, again, the same sort of rules apply. Make sure you're somewhere quiet. Also, make sure you're appropriately dressed, and make sure that whatever's behind you is appropriate as well. Because again, it's your personal brand essentially. It's what you're trying to sell.
Exactly. I had it once as a candidate, and then about halfway through, they decided that they wanted me to share my screen He'd show them what tools I had installed
Mm.
on my personal laptop, which is
It's
I
interesting.
thought was quite unusual.
Yeah,
Because I just
interesting.
spoke them through my favourite tools.
Yeah.
Luckily, it was on my one of my old laptops. Luckily, I used to use that as part of doing testing in the house
Yeah.
as well, part of U-Test as well.
Yeah.
So I had tools installed, but I always was thinking, well, what if I was using someone else's machine, or what if I don't use this for testing, but they've asked me to share my screen, so it's kind of
That's interesting.
I found it really unusual though. And
Yeah.
quite uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think so. I think Skype or Hangouts or whatever they're used increasingly now, and I think it's ultimately whatever makes the hiring process more efficient.
Yeah.
I think it's got to be a good thing, and not just from the hiring manager's perspective, but from the candidate's perspective, because you probably are not putting all your eggs in one basket if you're looking for a new job. So you've probably got multiple you've got your CV into multiple places, and therefore anything that can make your life ultimately more efficient and mean that you don't, for example, maybe waste your time travelling a large amount of time just to go to a face-to-face interview to find out that it wasn't the job you thought it was anyway.
Yeah.
It's got to be a good thing.
Yeah. True.
So you get through the phone interview, and next step probably logically, then face-to-face. What do you do for a face-to-face interview? What are your experiences of face-to-face interviews then, Dan?
So when I'm holding an interview with a candidate, I do like to challenge them on their opinions on things. So what do they think testing is? What do they think about automation, for example? What can't you automate is a question I like to ask. You know,
I like that.
Yeah. What can you not automate?
Yeah.
Surprising amount of people that struggle. You know, but I don't know whether it's the pressure of the interview or because I know I've been in situations where my mind's completely gone blank. You know, but yeah, try and generally get into a conversation through asking these sort of questions, and if the conversation flows, then that's it. I like it when that happens. It makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, it's a good sign. I mean, if you're the one on the other side asking the questions, if you find you don't have to ask quite a lot of questions because the answers are already coming up in the discussion, that's the best feeling you can get as a hiring manager, because you think, well, hang on a minute, we're having a discussion and I'm getting what I need out of this discussion without really having to probe too deeply. Therefore, that gives you a really good feeling that this person might be a good fit for your team.
Yeah. I always try to avoid pointless questions as well. When I was a candidate once, this is when I first moved into London as well, I was asked a question, what do I keep in my fridge? And for the life of me, to this day, I've got no idea what the purpose of asking that question was. Because it's not going to tell you anything about team fit.
No.
It's not going to tell you anything about my skills as a tester. What's the point?
Did you say I am brew?
I did, yeah. I said I am brew. Chances are there'll be a cake in there. But sometimes I keep my coffee in the fridge as well. So.
You should keep your coffee in the fridge.
Why?
Because if you keep, it's like anything. If it's ground, because the temperature, a lower temperature ultimately keeps it fresh for longer. Yeah, so you should keep the air out of it, and you should keep it in the fridge. Don't keep it in the freezer. Keep it in the freezer. It gets too cold. It makes rubbish coffee, and it all sticks together, and it doesn't fit in the cafetiere. Interesting. I think the most rubbish question I had, which I think somebody had just pulled out of the 25 questions to ask people when you don't really know what you're supposed to be asking for, was why are manhole covers round? Now it's okay. There's a bit of logic to the question, but it was also a really rubbish question.
So that it can't fall down the hole.
That's absolutely
Is
right.
It? Oh, brilliant.
Absolutely right.
I was thinking about maybe it's something to do with moving them because they're big metal, but then
no, it's absolutely right. You can't drop a circle down a circular hole.
Yeah.
Anyway, what we've started doing increasingly for hiring is we've started using what's called persona-based interviewing. So the great thing about testing, and particularly this is when we've been hiring for mobile roles, is that you can take a bit of software or an app or something like that into the interview, and you can kind of put it in front of the candidate, and you can say, well, how would you test this? So real life example, and what we've been doing is coming up with some scenarios where we'll play different roles in the scenario. So we'll design scenarios where one of us may be the product owner, one maybe another tester, somebody maybe a dev manager or something like that.
Yeah.
And we'll get the candidate to start testing the software, and then maybe, for example, the product owner may come in and say, well, hang on, we need to prioritize the testing like this, or the dev manager may come in and say, I need you to stop testing, and just to see what the response is, and then also we maybe give them some theoretical bugs and say, well, having used the application now and these theoretical bugs and what you understand of the application and our typical customer base, how would you prioritize these? Or what advice would you give to a product owner? How would you work within the team? And we find that's really, really useful because it's kind of it's real world rather than theoretical abstract questions, whether they're testing specific or whether they're about manhole covers or fridges.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you want somebody who comes in, fits in a team, and works effectively. And by essentially almost getting them to do some little exercises or some little bits of work in the interview, we can really kind of get a really good idea of whether they would fit.
But really, I know you've kind of said what you would expect from them, but as a candidate, I would have no idea what your expectation is. So are you expecting someone to come in and start testing that? Or are you expecting them to come in and start asking tons of questions?
Well, both.
Yeah.
So let's kind of use a theoretical example. You plonk an iPad with an app down in front of somebody, and you say, test this.
Okay.
First thing I would expect is a lot of questions.
Yeah.
If somebody just picks it up and starts basically in a relatively ad hoc way doing stuff in it, and then I ask them, well, can you talk us through what you're doing, and they can't, that probably means they don't test in a very structured way, and also they dive straight into things without actually thinking about the consequences. So in that situation,
but say for example your app was a banking app, and then they looked at it for 2 seconds and found a security flaw, and then you asked them what you're doing, and they explained, okay, I figured that because it's a banking app, one of the key risks is security, so I started looking at security first and found this flaw. It's essentially doing the exact same thing that you said that you wouldn't be looking for.
No. What is, like anything, good testing is about establishing the context,
Yeah.
understanding the customer,
Okay.
taking a structured approach to what you do, whether you're doing exploratory testing or whatever, having a rough plan. Obviously, how detailed your plan is very dependent on the context, and then ultimately being able to effectively articulate what you've done and why you've done it.
Okay.
So if I handed them something and they just literally dive straight into it, and then we talked through it while they were doing it, we talked through it afterwards, and they said, okay, I thought I'd look at security first.
Yeah.
That's okay. If they'd asked some questions to establish the context first, maybe I would have said, well, actually, there's already been some security testing done on this now, or
Yeah.
we're not looking at security today. We're looking at something else.
They do still need to ask the questions first. I've been in interviews and I've hosted interviews that have had testing challenges in. But say for example, I was in an interview where I was asked to test a pepper mill, not pepper, in case you get mixed up my accent.
Yeah. Grass, etc.
Initially, I took that as, okay, well, there wasn't a physical pepper mill in front of me. Initially, I started asking the questions, what type of pepper mill is it? Is it the electronic one, or is it one of those old school wooden ones? What type of peppers are going to be grinding? Things like that. Is it a plastic grinder? Is it metal? What's its purpose, really? I know it's going to be grinding pepper, but who is it going to be grinding pepper for? What's its price range? Things like that. So, and I kind of, although I was asking the questions, it's that situation where it's all regarding who the interviewer is. Now, if I asked that question, I'd be looking for that. But equally, someone in another company, somebody else, might be looking for how do you actually test this pepper mill. Do you know what I mean? So I would grind the pepper to make sure that it grinds pepper. I would drop it to make sure it's durable. Things like that. So it really depends on what the interviewer is asking for.
It is, but
So is it okay to ask? If you're in an interview, is it okay to say, well, what do you expect?
Of course,
Of
because
this.
flip it around the other way and think, if you got the job and you went in and the company had a culture of not asking questions and just doing what you're told.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'd like to work in a company like that. And I think that's kind of the key thing. One of the key things about interviews, they're not a one-way thing; they're a two-way thing. You need to be sure that the company you may accept a job from is the right fit for you, as much as they need to be sure that you're the right fit for the company.
Yeah. That depends on the position, though, right? Because if you're going in as, I don't know, like a test coach, and you know that that's the mentality, where they don't ask questions, then it would be your job to kind of change that, right?
True.
But if you're going in as a tester, knowing that they've got that mentality and it's going to be harder to change opinions, well, then that's completely different. I wouldn't like that.
No, exactly. So I mean, as I say, I think that's the key thing. Through the interview process, make sure that it's the right company for you. And if you're lucky and they give you an offer, for example, then from both sides, the key thing with that is not rushing. So don't rush into accepting an offer. If you're the manager hiring, don't rush into offering a role to somebody who is not exactly what you're looking for. What I've certainly found over the years of hiring testers is, if it doesn't feel quite right, then it normally isn't. It's very, very rare that, the few occasions where I've hired people and it hasn't felt right, almost universally it hasn't worked out. So basically, your gut reaction is normally right in those situations, and really don't rush into decisions on either side, because at the end of the day, you're making a commitment, whether you're the candidate making a commitment to an organisation, or an organisation making a financial and commitment to a person. Recruiting is expensive. Recruiting is hard, and so the temptation is always, because there's always pressure around recruiting. The temptation is always, oh right, we've got all these. Oh that guy, he was okay, wasn't he? All right, let's offer to him. Tick. Right, let's move on. The reality is, normally, if you do that, all you're going to be doing in a few months' time is, well, you're either going to have an awkward situation where you've got somebody who's clearly not the right fit, or you're going to be looking for you're going to be basically repeating what you've done in the first place all over again.
It's interesting because I agree with you there. I think if you're a candidate, you should be going into that interview as if you're hosting that interview in the company as well.
Yeah.
So that's a
What
good
sort
way
of questions would you ask?
If I was a candidate?
Yeah.
Well, I would ask about. Okay, so if I was an interviewer, I would ask what the sort of your opinions are on things, but I would do the same as if I was the candidate myself. So I would ask what the company's impression is on automation, for example. If the company thinks that you can automate everything, then it's probably not a very good place to be while they've got that misconception. Same, there's tons and tons of misconceptions. What is testing? If the company can't answer that question, then it's going to be a difficult job. Right? That's the type of questions that I would ask, whether I'm the candidate or I'm the interviewer. Because I guess you are kind of testing the company.
You are.
In a sense.
Yeah,
in the
you are.
interview. So, is there any good reading material about this?
About this, from a hiring manager perspective, the Johanna Rothman book, Hiring Geeks That Fit. I like that. That's a good book. That's certainly worth reading. What else? I know Rob Lambert has done, or he's doing, a really good selection of blog posts about recruitment and hiring testers. I think he's writing a Lean Pub book about it.
That's cool.
Check with Rob. Hopefully he is, because he's certainly done a good selection of blog posts around hiring testers recently. And then there's a whole bunch of kind of more general books that you can consult, and also bear in mind, if you work for kind of medium to large size company, there's probably a whole bunch of policies, procedures, historical information, question sheets, answer sheets, yada yada yada, a whole bunch of stuff that you can fall back on as well. Because if you from a hiring perspective, the other thing you've got to bear in mind is you represent the company. You're the face of the company when you're in an interview, and therefore you need to. There are some occasions where you need to, what you do needs to fit in with the way the company operates as well. There may be some guidelines you need to follow.
And what I would say as well, just with having conversations and reading documentation within an organisation, if you're a tester and you're not involved in recruitment, get involved. Go and have a chat with the HR people and the test managers or delivery managers or whoever it is. Get involved, because it's a great way to enhance your questioning skills as well, because it makes you think about different perspectives, different contexts. Not about a product, but about a person, about knowledge, and it also kind of tests your knowledge a little bit and gives you different perspectives as well. So it's good for self-learning as well. So
and don't be afraid of interviewing. So it can be a bit daunting at the beginning, but the key thing you always have to remember is if it's feeling daunting for you as an interviewer, then it's going to feel a hell of a lot more daunting for the person being interviewed. And it, like everything in life, it's something you get better at by practicing. So the more practice you do, the more interviews you do, the more confident you will become. And so maybe for the first couple of interviews, maybe just observe. Maybe just go in there and watch, or maybe sit in the background in phone interviews and just watch a more experienced person doing the interviews, and then slowly but surely take a more active part in.
Cool.
Good so session. So hopefully after all of that, you get the offer or you find the candidate you want, and all's good.
Nice one.
Excellent. So that's our views on hiring testers. If you've got any other views on hiring testers as well, we'd love to hear from you. So leave a comment on the site or catch us on Twitter at testinginthepub. Website's testinginthepub.co.uk. We're also on YouTube now, Testing in the Pub YouTube channel, where we're putting these podcasts up. We're going to explore a bit of video podcasting at some point in the future as well. So it's another way you can consume Testing in the Pub.
Fantastic.
And we will be back very, very soon.